Hello and welcome to Irish Science Fiction. My name is Brian Sexton and you are going to be listening to, if you hang around, chapter 34 of Nancy Goodame, the Space Ranger. So, a hen, it's a daw, it's a tree, and away we go. How can you tell the bumpiness of the road? Asked European Space Agency mission specialist Nancy Goodame McGinley. The road she was referring to was the Seanballamore transport artery. It had once been a thriving and busy route. Now, the only traffic consisted of 2 elderly shopkeepers and a crossbow-armed extraterrestrial. "Why would you want to know that?" asked Habon Unterwackel. "That was directions we got. Travel along the Seanballamore artery until the road gets significantly less bumpy." "Well, we're not making too good a go of that," replied Habon. She was right. They had been shuffling. Habon and Shenobble Unterwackel, along with Nancy, were making their way along the Seanballamore route in the hope of meeting one of the Abbedine monks living in the foothills of the Stormy Hills, who, they hoped, would lead them to the Witch of Mulnavore. But they were not shuffling because the road was especially hard. They were shuffling because Shenobble Unterwackel was out of puff and trailing behind. Nancy knew this, but was too polite to say. So how can you tell the bumpiness of the road?" she asked again. "Bit of a stupid question, Nancy," noted Habon. She then paused for a moment and said, "Sorry, I keep forgetting you're an extraterrestrial," she added. Do you not have roads on your planet? If you don't, it must take ages to get anywhere." "We do have roads," said Nancy, just not like this," she added. Ours are better. Well, no offence." "You're not offending me," said Habon. "It's Sazman Borkstapel's job to look after the infrastructure, and he's making a pig's ear of it. But sure, that's the least of problems he's caused. If he was only just useless at administration, I probably wouldn't have the urge to rip him limb from limb. It's just not a big enough of a thing to motivate savagery. Well, for me anyways." Nancy looked around and saw a row of smaller, rougher and increasingly less well-maintained windowless stone buildings flanking the gravel and dirt road she was walking. Low vegetation covering the hills ahead. The vegetation was a mix of purple, brown and red, the back of Hanon's thick head of grey hair leading the way. And, when she looked back, the bright red and puffed face of Shenobble Unterwackel. Are we nearly there?" he asked. They weren't. They would first need to pass through the scattered buildings and gentle slopes that surrounded Bundrazna on 3 sides. After that, they would climb up to a road that curved its way around the lower slopes of the Stormy Hills. And finally, they would come to a steep, well-worn and maintained path that marked the edge of the grassy lower hills and the steeper forested Stormy Hills proper, before hopefully making contact with one of the Abbedine monks that lived in the forest. All of this meant that Shenobble Unterwackel faced a lot more exertion before he would have the chance to put his feet up. And the thought of putting his feet up was what prompted his question. He was out of luck. "No, we're not. Not by a long shot. Sure, we're not even out of Bundrazna," said Habon. "You shouldn't have insisted on coming." "I didn't. You told me to come." "Well, more fool you for listening to me," replied Habon. So how will we know when the roads are less bumpy?" interrupted Nancy. "I've no idea, Nancy. But I tell you this much," said Habon. "The roads used to be a lot different and a lot better before Sazman Borkstapel came to power. Him and his damn snot-a-gomble water heater. That's how we started off, you know, flogging silly unnecessary water heaters. And the stupid priests bought into it. Don't tell the abbot I said that. You can say what you like to the Abbedine monks. They're sworn to silence. Anyway, that's how the stupid Sosniaks got started. One dope of a Jupiterian comes up with a pointless thing and they all think he's the new Bongerlon. Everything would be better with Sosman, the Sosniaks would say, and that's only because he told them it would be. And they'd sit there looking like nodding dogs agreeing with his every word. And you know, the irony is he didn't even come up with the idea for a snot-a-gomble water heater himself. He took it from someone else, the float. Ah well, he won't be so cocky after I rip him to pieces." Habon stopped walking and gestured around her. Nancy followed the gesture but could not make out what it was she was indicating. She didn't have long to wander. "The roads, Nancy, once went everywhere, so us Jupiterians didn't have to. And every Jupiterian had their own one too. A single square of roadway under your feet that you could roll anywhere you want, on polished bearings that ran as smooth as a Habalontine obstacle, or the aftermath of a Habalontine obstacle at any rate. Years ago, you could just stand up, step onto your own private road, think of where you wanted to go, and the roads would do the rest." "Did you say the roads would do the rest?" asked Nancy. "Yes," replied Shenobble. "How?" "Magic," replied Shenobble. He had now caught up to the stationary Nancy and Habon and was taking a brief rest by squatting on his hunkers in the middle of the road. I tell you, I wouldn't have been able to do this back then. There was always thousands of chunks of road carrying folk back and forth, sliding away on those smooth bearings. In fairness to the Gabelodians, they may have been ugly, bad-tempered, petty, vicious, narrow-minded, unctuous, vile and ignorant, but they made a great fist of keeping the roads rolling. Not one bump. Using magic? Asked Nancy. Exactly, added Habon. And it worked just grand until Sosman turned up with his promise of physics and more or less banned magic. Well, except for his buddies. For some reason, he was fine with them using magic. Not for some reason. For one very specific reason. And the reason is that Sosman thinks Jupiter and the solar system, for that matter, belongs to him. And he gets to tell everyone who's who and what's what with everything. And the problem with that is he's a simpleton, interrupted Habon. And the bollocks, added Shenobble. And the bollocks is exactly right, agreed Habon. I'm glad you came. Come on, try to keep up. You're putting us Jupiterians to shame in front of the extraterrestrial with all your huffing and puffing. And that was that. Nancy, Habon, and the huffing, grunting Shenobble continued on their way, and travelled for hours without words. They gradually left windowless stone buildings behind them. The road wound its way across open dusty ground with low vegetation, and this vegetation increased in height until it was almost head-high. The road then began one really sharp straight climb. It caused Shenobble to increase his huffing and to fall far behind Nancy and Habon, who were afforded a clear view over Bondrosna and its surrounding countryside. Nancy could see all of Bondrosna and far beyond towards the neglected route she had taken into the town. It seemed smaller under the sunlight. Beyond the thick vegetation, she could see the bare gullied rocks where the elderly Glimp had attacked the flomp wagon. Forests seemed to extend in every direction. She could make out occasional patches of blue and light green of what she imagined to be water and grassland. With the exception of the stone buildings of Bondrosna and the glint of what looked to be large metal platforms peeking through the purple and green canopy of vegetation, the landscape appeared untouched. It was an almost peaceful scene. Almost peaceful, because a gentle silence was being consistently disrupted by a distant complaining from Shenobble. Complaints like, but not limited to, "Wait up! It's not fair. The two are smaller to me. That means less gravity. So ye should think of that. Hey, there's no rush. I'm hungry. Sosman Borkstap's a bollocks. I'm thirsty. My foot is sore. I'm going to kill Borkstapple for this. Why are ye ignoring me? Can you see the monks yet? I'm starving. Will you slow down?" Nancy tapped Habon on the shoulder and pointed out across the landscape where a particularly large metal tower glinted in the sunlight. "What are they?" she asked. Habon stopped walking, turned to Nancy and mimicked kicking an object. She then squatted on the ground, wrinkled up her face, pinched her nose and stepped away, and spat. Nancy looked back out across the landscape to where the metal tower protruded above the tree canopy and said, I'm sorry, I don't understand." Habon sighed and repeated her actions, with the exception of shaking her head at the end. Nancy watched carefully and tried to imagine what they meant, failed, and shrugged. For Abbedine sake, I hope those monks are better at communicating in silence than you, Nancy, or we're all in trouble. What I'm saying is that those constructions are Sosniak lookout towers, but the stupid Egypts are so stupid they didn't realise that once they're above the vegetation canopy, they can't see underneath. And not one of them is humble enough to admit it was so stupid to build them, so now they're home to desperate, lonely Sosniak guards who report back daily on the nothing they see. I suppose, in terms of hierarchy in the Sosniak ranks, it's probably as low as you can get. The Hoblogranicor Defence League could easily kill them all, as the guards are all alone. You know, one Hoblogranicor Defence League member, armed with nothing but a Tamagalodian axe and a Spongorial vine, could wipe out the lot of them, if they were a threat, which they're not. Anyways, can you talk silently in future? I need to practice being silent for the monks." Nancy thought briefly about what she had been told and shrugged. She now knew what the towers were, and did not want to waste any more time. "Okay," she said. The sun was slowly beginning to set when they reached a section of roadway that levelled. It was on a sort of plateau. There was thick vegetation on one side while the other side of the road sloped away. Habon motioned for Nancy to stop walking. Nancy listened. She could hear the Jupiterian cursing of an exhausted Shenobble approaching slowly from behind. But apart from the gentle whooshing of a light breeze through the vegetation, there was no noise. "Shh!" shushed Habon. "I never said anything." "Shh!" repeated Habon. Hey lads! Do you have anything to eat? I'm starving," yelled Shenobble. He'd shuffle walked to within 10 feet of where Nancy and Habon were stood, and was flanked by 2 monks. "Be quiet, you big Egypt!" yelled Habon, who then repeated herself in a quieter tone of voice. "Be quiet, you big Egypt!" she shushed. "What?" asked Shenobble. "She said be quiet," explained Nancy. "Shush!" shushed Habon for a third time. "I can't really hear you, hold on!" yelled Shenobble. He then shuffle-puffed the last 10 metres along the road between himself, Nancy and Habon, and the two monks followed silently. "These lads are a bit ignorant," he said, when he got level with Habon. "Completely ignore me when I ask for food."
"They have taken a vow of silence, you idiot," explained Habon. "Now shush."
"Why should I shush if they can't hear me?" asked Shenobble.
"Just whisht, will you? We need to find the abbot to locate the witch of Monastery."
Habon then turned to one of the two monks and made several theatrical gestures with her hands. She then pointed to the sky, shook her head, and pointed at her shoe. The monk stepped over to Nancy, leaned in and said,
"Is that one okay?"
Yes, I think so. She's just trying to communicate with you. We need to speak with the abbot so he can direct us to the witch of Monastery."
"What for?"
"So we can travel to Seanballamore. I thought you took a vow of silence."
"Why do you want to go to Seanballamore?"
"Oh, to save a friend of mine from a robot." Is it not true that you took a vow of silence?"
"Why does a robot want to kill your friend?" asked the monk.
I'm not sure. The Geronimus Flomp said it did." "Oh, well, if the Flomp said it, it must be true. I think you're out of luck, though. The witch of Monastery is away on holidays. Though, let the abbot tell you that. I'm not supposed to be talking. When will she be back?"
"She didn't say," said the monk.
"But I noticed she was heading off with 2 large suitcases, so it'll probably be a while. But sure, the abbot can tell you that. Don't tell him I was talking." "Yes, same here," said the second monk. He'd been listening intently.
"But you didn't say anything."
"Until now," said Nancy. "Oh, yeah. Well, then don't tell him I said same here, then."
"Quiet the lorry,"
snapped Habon. She bent her arms and raised her elbows level with her shoulders so that her 2 forearms pointed upwards. She then sidestepped slowly over and back in front of the monks and yelled,
"Can ye take us to see the abbot?"
"Yes, of course," replied the 2 monks. Habon placed a finger over her lips. Just nod if you don't mind," suggested Nancy. "It'll just be easier in the long run." When we get there, could you ask the abbot if he's got something to eat?" asked Shenobble. "I'm starving," he added.
"Don't be stupid, Shenobble," snapped Habon. "They can't talk."
"Right, okay. Well, could you mime to the abbot that we've just walked all the way up here from Bundrosna and could do with something to eat?" asked Shenobble. Both monks nodded. They then turned towards the vegetation that flanked one side of the road and walked in through a gap in the bushy purple trees. Habon turned to the Shenobble and Nancy and said,
"The two of ye be quiet from now on, or we'll never find this witch."
"She's away on holidays. Those 2 lads just said so," noted Shenobble.
"We need to hear that from the abbot,"
snapped Habon, before following the 2 monks through a gap in the purple vegetation. Nancy followed Habon, and a tired, grumbling Shenobble shuffled after Nancy. "We should have packed some sandwiches," he muttered. The journey to the monastery of Abbedine took roughly half an hour. The path was overgrown and some parts involved climbing over branches of low vegetation. The ground was soft underfoot, but the air smelt fresh and shafts of sunlight broke through the vegetation, making the place seem welcoming. Eventually the group arrived at a large clearing with what looked to be several ruined sheds scattered throughout. The monks pointed to a larger stone and wood shed at the very centre of the clearing. A bearded fat man in a black robe was sitting on a long bench outside the front of the large shed and staring over at them. The 2 monks that had been accompanying Habon, Nancy and Shenobble nodded to him and walked off into one of the smaller buildings. The man stood up, cleared his throat and said, "Sorry folks, but the witch of Monastery is away on holidays and she'll probably be gone for a bit. She headed off with 2 suitcases." How did you know we were looking for the witch?" asked Nancy. Oh, did you come up to visit me?" he asked.
"No," replied Habon, "just the witch."
Have you got anything to eat?" asked Shenobble. "Nobody comes up here to visit us," said the man sadly. "I suppose it's a good job we have the creator of the universe to chat to," he added. He then gestured to the inside of the building. "I'm the abbot of Abbedine Monastery, and you 3 are very welcome. And yes, we have food. Would you like to eat here or inside? It's a nice day. I think we should eat outside."
"Outside is fine," snapped Habon. "You said the witch is going away for a bit. How long is a bit?"
"Long enough to eat food, I'd say," replied the abbot. And do a great many other things too. Days, weeks, months or years she could be gone," he said. "Oh, probably weeks, though. She'll be back in a few weeks, I reckon. She lives here," he added, pointing to a particularly run-down shed close to the edge of the clearing.
"There?"
asked Habon. "Yes," replied the abbot. "Nice, isn't it? Who wouldn't want to come back to a place like that? Though, don't tell the Sosniaks about it. They'll only want to kill her."
"Don't you worry about that. We're not going to say a word to those idiots. In fact, we're on our way to kill Sosman Barkstaple himself," said Habon.
"But we need to visit Seanballamore first," interrupted Nancy. "That's why we're looking for the witch, so she could tell us how to get there." "You don't need the witch for that," said the abbot.
You could just ask the creator of the universe. The gut created all living things, and dead things too. Everything there ever was, and ever will be, in fact. The gut is bound to know where it is. You should ask the gut.
But how do we do that? Asked Nancy.
The best way to talk to the gut is to pray, explained the abbot. Come, join me.
The abbot motioned for Nancy, Habon and Shenobble to sit beside him on the bench.
Would it be okay if we just had a quick snack beforehand?
Asked Shenobble.
Whisht, will ya?
Snapped Habon.
There'll be plenty of time for you to shovel grub down your mush later.
She then sat down next to the abbot. Nancy sat next to her, followed by Shenobble. The abbot held out his hand and motioned for Habon to grab it, and do likewise. Habon extended her hand, which was held by Nancy, who then offered her right hand for Shenobble to hold.
Give me strength,
he muttered as he grabbed Nancy's hand.
Strength is not what you need, my friend, said the abbot. Patience is what you need, and consider yourself lucky to be able to pray like this. The monks here have to do so silently, so if you forget the words, you're in serious trouble.
The abbot then loudly cleared his throat and said,
Repeat after me. Glory to the gut, creator of all things, the one who had the foresight to see the need for a universe, and to create it. Verily, with all its things, rocks, shrubs, memories, space rockets, and of course, Seanballamore, we implore of you, O Great One, show us the way to Seanballamore.
The group falteringly repeated his sentences and sat in silence for several minutes. How long does it normally take for the gut to get back to you, abbot? Asked Nancy.
It varies,
replied the abbot.
This is ridiculous, muttered Shenobble. Can we not just get a bite to eat and then go back to whatever this council is doing after?
Patience, my son, said the abbot.
I'm not your son, you dope. I'm old enough to be your grandfather.
Patience, repeated the abbot.
Look, if yourself and your buddies want to sit up here in the woods scraping out an existence in a collection of ruined old hovels while chatting away to an imaginary being, then off you go. But it doesn't mean the rest of us have to. We came up here to find the witch and maybe get a sandwich or something. The witch is not here, there's no sign of food, and I for one am not prepared to spend the rest of my days wasting time asking for help from some...
Shenobble didn't get to finish his sentence, which may have been for the best. At that exact moment, an enormous gust of wind ripped through the clearing, kicking up purple leaves and dust. It was followed by a loud thud. The dust cleared slowly. Standing next to a particularly run-down shed close to the edge of the clearing was a smartly dressed, middle-aged, female humanoid carrying 2 suitcases.
Ah, said the abbot, the witch has come back early. Why don't you go over and chat to her, and I'll fetch us all something to eat. She'll probably be hungry after her journey.
And so it was for the end of the 5th day of the first human expedition to another planet. A hungry Martian shopkeeper, a rested witch, a possible route to Seanballamore, a murderous robot, an underground army of sorts, dinner, and the last remaining copy of the Book of Bongalon, adrift on the Sea of Uncertainty, on Jupiter. So again, folks, as always, thank you if you stuck through that, and fair play, and there'll be another episode at 2 weeks again, and chapter 35. Appreciate it. Chat to you again.